This is the Investor Connect podcast program. I'm Hall T. Martin. I'm the host of this show in which we interview angel investors, venture capital, family offices, private equity, and many other investors for early stage and growth companies. I hope you enjoy this episode. Need help in finding investors for your startup, fund, or angel group? 10 Capital provides funding as a service helping you find accredited investors. Contact 10 Capital to gain access to investors for angel and venture capital funds, family office rounds, and syndication raises. To learn more, go to 10capital.group. Well, hello, this is Hall Martin with Investor Connect. Today we're here with Paul Glover, author of Workquake and executive coach at Paul Glover Coaching. Paul is the No BS work performance coach, a recovering trial lawyer, an ex-felon, an unabashed Starbucks addict, a Chicago Bears fanatic, the author of Workquake, a speaker on business and leadership topics, and a member of the Forbes Coaching Council. Paul, thank you for joining us.
Paul, thank you so very much. I appreciate the invitation and the opportunity to speak to your audience.
Great. So tell us more about your background. Where do you come from?
Well, you pretty much outlined it. I am a recovering trial lawyer. I practiced trial law and labor and employment law in the city of Chicago for approximately 30 years. And then at some point made that decision to seek another career. And I thought, based on my experience, that I had a very unique opportunity as a coach. I've experienced most of what leaders are going to experience, especially when it comes to adversity and recovery. So I decided to give that a shot. Started to develop a coaching practice. And now it's a national coaching practice for mid-level and C-suite leaders. And it's all about performance. I tell people I'm the last guy you want to have for life coaching. But when it comes to performance coaching, I believe that I've got the opportunity to develop a trust relationship with leaders and also give them the accountability that they need to reach the goals that we mutually set. And one final thing, I think every coach needs to put some skin in the game. My skin in the game is compensation. Once we've set the goals for our 12-month engagement, at the end of that 12-month engagement, it's entirely up to the client to determine whether or not we reach the goals. And my compensation is based on that determination. So it could be, even though it never has occurred, that I would get zero compensation for the entire year. So I believe that makes me more accountable, but it also engages my client in a different type of relationship.
So great. So you wrote the book Workquake. What inspired you to write it?
Well, actually, it was based off of the fact that, and I give myself too much credit today because the book actually was a prediction, and it's a prediction about what we're experiencing now in the workforce and the workplace. I believe that we were still enmeshed in the industrial age approach in both the 40% of the employees that work in the office, but the other 60% that are engaged in those essential services but are not in the office. And I looked at that, and based on my experience and based on my coaching, I decided that I would be able to put together a book that predicted what leaders needed to do to move out of the industrial age mindset and into the knowledge or information age mindset. And that was done way too many years ago, 2012. And I reread the book recently just because so many of the ideas that I put forth in the book are now being considered, just because employers are suddenly faced with a tipping point of employee resentment and lack of engagement and choice. So we've heard, everyone has now heard the Great Resignation is upon us. And when I look at the Great Resignation, I can absolutely identify why. If you have not been treating your workforce the way they are supposed to be treated, and by the way, that's not the way they want to be treated, but the way they need to be treated, why would you expect them to stay when they're given an opportunity to leave? And I believe that we are now 40 years, the 40 years of mistreatment. And from that, I mean that based on that, I mean that we're not, the concept of stakeholder capitalism is something that needs to be a reality. And your primary stakeholder, if you're a business owner, is your employee. And if you don't treat them like a stakeholder, a partner, then don't anticipate that they're going to treat you as a stakeholder and a partner. By the way, I back that up by Gallup doing their annual engagement survey, which shows that only 36% of all employees are engaged. 17% are actively disengaged, and the remainder are just working for a paycheck. So if you expect they're going to hang around when somebody offers them something better, you're insane.
Very true. Very true. We're witnessing that now. So tell us more about the book. What exactly did you want to do with that book? As far as how did you present it?
Well, I presented it in what I called a daily dose of espresso for your brain. So every day is a lesson that is available to read 1-2 pages and take something away from that as an action item. I hate any advice that doesn't have an action item connected to it. But that's half the book. The other half of the book I called the Daily Mantra. And the Daily Mantra was aimed at self-care for leaders. Leadership is extraordinarily difficult, more difficult than most people have any concept about, because of the loneliness that you exist in, as well as the filters that surround you. My experience in coaching is that most leaders at 3 or 4 levels above the front line are getting such a filtered view of reality that it absolutely is not connected to reality. So I looked at that daily mantra as self-care that would cause you to be better in the leadership position, but also develop the concept of psychological safety based on trust.
Great. And so who is the primary audience for it? Who were you talking to when you wrote it?
Business owners, obviously executives in the C-suite, entrepreneurs. I believe that the lessons apply to everyone who is in a leadership position, from team leaders at a low level all the way to the executive team. So I think that there's something in the book for everyone in that level, and it was generalized, but you can pull a lesson from each lesson.
And who else do you think could benefit from it aside from business leaders?
Actually, I think that when we talk about business leaders, this book was written not for companies, but for organizations. And so I go across the board. I believe that any organization that requires leadership also requires followers. And therefore, it's a book that's based on creating a dialogue that occurs between those two groups, those that lead and those that follow, and is based on the concept of turning teams into self-directed teams. I'm a strong believer in high performance work teams, but that's not the future of work. The future of work is self-directed work teams, and we flirt with that idea. My book is all about taking the lessons of leadership and being able to share it with those that are capable of being in a self-directed work team.
Cool. And so what surprised you the most when you wrote the book? What did you discover that you didn't expect to see?
Well, I guess I was shocked by how hard it was to write a book. I don't know if you haven't had the experience. See, I can talk forever. You and I could talk for the next 4 hours, and I wouldn't miss a beat. You asked me to write 400 words, and it kills me. So it was extraordinarily difficult. I'll tell you how I got there. Just as a side note, I actually had it published. It was not self-published, so I had an editor. And I labored over the material, and I sent it to the editor, and he said, all right, by the time I edit this down, you're going to need 50 more pages. And it was like a dagger in my heart. I was like, I thought I was through with this thing. It's back and on me. I felt like I was struggling with my own book. I said, well, this is crazy. I don't know how I'm going to do this. And the more I thought about it, I said, well, wait a minute. You're a performance coach. So you've got to set up something that is going to motivate you to do this 50 pages. And I figured out how I would do it, because, by the way, performance is all about figuring out what motivates individuals. Everybody is a snowflake. We all are motivated by different things. So I contacted writing coaches, 3 of them, in fact, and I said, look, I don't want you to criticize, critique, or tell me any information, feedback about what I'm sending you. I don't care. I know that sounds rude, but I don't care. All I'm interested in is the fact that I will send you this material. And the deal is this: every day I will send you a page. And at 11:59 at night, if I haven't, I'm going to write you a check for $100. $100 a page per day. Believe me, I am money motivated. And I guarantee you that I was not going to miss getting that page in. So I paid them a flat rate for engaging because they didn't like it. Nobody who wants to be is a writing coach. They want to give you critique. And I just wasn't up for it. I was like, pages. And I know what I'm going to write. I know my topics. I just have to write it. Guess what? At the end of 50 days, I had 50 pages. So that's how arduous it was for me to write a book. And that was what shocked me the most.
So you didn't have to write any $100 checks. Is that correct?
Not one. Believe me, at 11:59, I'm such a people. My coaching clients say that I'm an acquired taste, and that's absolutely true. One of them said like cyanide. So I have just got that character that this was a challenge, and I was obviously not going to lose the challenge with myself. And so I would wait till 11:59 at night, and I would send it. And I would say, no check today. And that motivated me, as rude as that sounds, to do what I felt I had to do within the time frame that I had to do it.
Well, tell me about your writing process. You sit down and do research for a few hours and then take a break and then you write a rough draft, or what time of day do you write, and how many words do you normally write in a sitting?
Well, and it depends on the topic. I'm writing, I write articles for Forbes as a member of the Forbes coaching community. And so I write with them, and they want lots of research to back up anything. So that's different writing, but more difficult, by the way. And second, unfortunately, I'm a recovering lawyer, which meant that I wrote trial briefs. And trial briefs are structured and absolutely have to be limited in word count. I actually had a judge once, I turned in a trial brief, and being a young lawyer and inexperienced, I knew what the length had to be, right? It was 15 pages. And so, of course, I thought, well, there's so much information that he'll understand when I turn in more than 15 pages. So I turned in 17 pages. And the last page was about the relief I was seeking for my client. And so our next status call, the judge called me up and he said, well, I received the brief and I wrote it, or I read it, but I'm curious, why didn't you ask for any relief? Well, I said, Your Honor, I did. He said, really? I said, where? I said, well, on page 17. He said, there is no page 17 in my court. So my writing is extraordinarily structured, and I've had to break out of that because I'm really good at presentation. But the reality is there's a narrative to my writing that I need to develop before it will absolutely have any influence or impact on the reader. So I'm really good. What I end up doing is I structure the writing, all of the facts, then I go back through and I add my stories. By the way, just like you, I've got 1,000 stories. I've been doing this a long time. All I have to do is be willing to put a story in to match the facts. So it's actually really a two-phase process. But my biggest problem is I'm a very curious guy, so I'm always looking and I'm always finding one more thing that I think would be nice to put in there. The problem is at some point you have to ship. I found that I have to at some point turn myself off so I don't get any more information.
Very good. So based on your experience with this book, what was the most important takeaway you found from it?
Well, I think as someone who's a content creator, you want to feel that you're going to have impact. Otherwise, the content just doesn't matter. I don't believe you should write. For me, I can't just write for the sake of writing. I joined a writing club. And there were people in there who just loved to write. And my deal was, well, have you sold anything? They were, no, but that's not the point. My point is when someone buys my book, I know there's going to be impact. So it has to have that level of impact and influence. And I found that it does. People who buy the book contact me and tell me this is a lesson on page 78 that resonated with me, and I was able to do something with the information.
Great. So, yeah. So, in this subject that you're going after in Workquake, how did the book change the way you think about the subject matter? What did you come out differently thinking from when you went in?
Well, I actually was even more convinced. This sounds so self-serving. I was even more convinced at the end of writing it than I was at the beginning of writing that what I had to say was the way it should be. That there does need to be stakeholder capitalism, that there does need to be a partnership. And I think at the beginning when I went through that, I was like, are we ready for this? Is American capitalism, American business ready for the proposition? And at this point, as I said at the very beginning, I think that the book has not only withstood the test of time, but actually was that prediction of what it was going to take for employers and employees to stop by the way, I even hate those titles. When we talk about managers, I hate the time. There's nobody who wants to be managed. So let's get over the terminology because it's old school. Let's get over command and control leadership. Let's get to the point where there's a dialogue at the front line and the executive suite without the filters. And that's what I've ended up with. It's even more important now, the premises that I talk about, even more important now to pay attention to, because we've got to that tipping point where employees they're mad as hell and they're not going to take it anymore.
Great. So based on this experience, what are you considering to write next?
I'm doing an update. I actually like my book so much. By the way, when I first went to the published book, I hated my book. It was like, you just killed me. This book is terrible. I can't. You know how it is. Going back and reading what you wrote does nothing but make me want to change it. Right? I keep thinking that should have been better. Right? So I left my book alone, and I came back to it maybe in 2019 when things started to change. I was like, something, I need to revisit what I had in that book because I think that it's coming true. It took 10 years, but that's okay. And I went back and I said, something, it's time to update the book. So I'm absolutely getting ready to do the rewrite.
Well, great. So you're rewriting it. Do you find there's a lot of new information that's come out since you wrote the last one, or is it simply just making a sharper, more pointed version of what you already know?
Well, first, it is the premises don't change because I don't think human beings change. However, the research is staggeringly better. And you're absolutely correct. I think that the message has to be honed. I believe that, not unfortunately, but in my coaching process, I believe in accountability. And I think that right now, business owners, business executives need to be held accountable. And I'm not sure that we're all kind of nibbling at that. But it's time that somebody say you are accountable. And by the way, if you're going to lose a third of your workforce, 40% of your workforce to the Great Resignation, do you understand that's on you? And we've known about this disengagement for decades, and you've done nothing about it. And now you're freaking out. A shame on you, and it serves you right. So how about if we now start to do what you should do, instead of not doing it and hoping things are going to be okay?
Good point. Well, in the last few minutes that we have here, what else should we cover that we haven't?
I don't know, man. You asked a couple of good questions, and I think I gave you too much answer. But it's a part of me, and I appreciated the opportunity to talk to you.
That's great. No, I think it's a timely book, timely topic for these days, and I think it's going to be well received. How best for the listener to obtain the book?
Actually, Amazon right now has it. You go on. The title of the book is The Workquake. And there's, even though I trademarked the term, a couple of other people are using it. Not that I'm going to sue anybody for it, but yeah, I accept the fact that it was a great term. But apparently, by the way, what they say is not copycatting, but geez, I can't remember. But it's considered to be the greatest compliment. when someone copies what you do. So I'm taking it that way rather than being angry. But regardless, you could go on Amazon, do the Workquake, the book, and the subtitle is "Making the Seismic Shift to a Knowledge Economy." And obviously, you look for Paul Glover, author.
Great. We'll put that in the show notes. I want to thank you for joining us today and hope to have you back for a follow-up soon.
I absolutely appreciate the opportunity. It's been fun.
Investor Connect helps investors interested in startup funding. In this podcast series, experienced investors share their experience and advice. You can learn more at investorconnect.org. Paul T. Martin is the director of Investor Connect, which is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to the education of investors for early stage funding. All opinions expressed by Hall and podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinion of Investor Connect. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions.